This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hello, and welcome to episode 108 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for listening in today. I hope you're having a great day, and I know you're going to enjoy today's guest, just like I did. As a quick heads up, as with the couple of episodes I have just done, this episode was recorded back in the spring. I'm just now publishing it. The content is super evergreen, so it's totally still valid. I just took a long break from the podcast and didn't publish some of these great episodes that I had recorded. So hope that's okay with you. Bearing that in mind, do know that if we mention any specific dates on the show, they might be deprecated, meaning they might not be valid anymore. And there might be some editing situations where you're like, oh, she probably should have edited that out. But you know what, you guys, I'm super minimum viable product. I already know the content is great. And if you have to hear us restart the interview, it's not really a big deal, right? Okay, great. I'm so glad we both agree on that. Let me tell you a little bit about Lin. She's a wedding photographer, videographer, and educator based in Jersey City, which is right at the cusp of North Jersey and New York City. She specializes in vibrant, natural, and cheerful weddings, events, and portraits. She also teaches workshops and courses to photographers and small business owners of all levels. When she's not shooting, editing, or teaching, Lin is probably redecorating her condo, trying out a new recipe, weightlifting with her boyfriend, or going to a country night with her friends. I laughed at that last sentence, going to a country night, because as you know, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I live on a sheep ranch in Colorado, so every night is country night for us. But I love to think of people enjoying that kind of culture. So Lin, that's so fun. That's awesome. It sounds really great. We're chatting about, as you may have seen on Instagram, we're chatting about practical ways to scale your wedding business. And I cannot tell you how clear and concise Lin is in this episode. Her guest submission form was so informative and practical. I just thought, well, yeah, let's just make this the episode. I really appreciate how thorough she is in this episode, and I know you guys will too. So really quickly, I want to tell you this, I want to give you just a little hint. If you are a venue owner like I am, or you want to be a venue owner, you've been thinking about being a venue owner, I have an amazing surprise for you on Thursday, September 13th, 2018. That's just a couple of days. It's the new episode that's going to be this week as this episode publishes. So Thursday, September 13th, 2018. If you're listening in the future, still listen to that episode. It's going to be episode 109, and you will not regret it because it's still going to be super valid no matter when you're listening to this. I promise you're going to want to take a listen. Okay, without further ado, let's get to the show with Lin to chat about practical ways we can scale our businesses. Lin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. We were just chatting offline, you guys, as I always do. I feel like I kind of talk my guests' ears off before that. I'm like, okay, sorry, let me hit record so we can talk about this online. But so you guys know from the title of this episode, we're really talking about how you can scale your business, or how you can kind of ease those growing pains when you are scaling your business or getting ready to scale your business, because we all have them at some point. And we were really kind of digging into who this content is really for. And before we get into that, Lin, what I would love is, I read your professional bio there at the top of the show, as I always do, but I love it when, if you could just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in your own words and kind of what you're doing in the wedding industry and why this is a topic you're personally so passionate about.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Lin Pernille. I'm based in Jersey City, New Jersey. I'm a wedding photographer, videographer, and educator. And yeah, this is the whole scaling your business and work-life balance thing has become a really big topic for me, kind of all of a sudden it feels. So I remember in January of 2017, when I was sitting down to write all of my New Year's resolutions and think about my goals for the year, I was thinking all about growing and building my business and getting more bookings and just everything having to do with growing. And then this year in 2018, when I sat down to do my goals, I realized that I did a complete 180. So instead of thinking about growing and building, all of my goals had to do with being more mindful of how many hours I work, work-life balance, more self-care and free time and family time, and kind of honing in my business. So just to focus on ideal clients and the ideal jobs I want to be doing. So I feel like there's no real specific formula to figure out like when your business takes that shift. But I feel like all of a sudden, your focus just shifts from building your business. And then one day you find yourself being like, okay, whoa, I need to like change my mindset now. So I think this podcast is really for not necessarily people who are starting their businesses and want to learn how to like hustle more and get more discipline. It's more for those entrepreneurs that have kind of reached a peak in their business and have noticed themselves needing more work-life balance and being more mindful of, honing in on their businesses.
Mm-hmm. What were you kind of going through, as like a human and a person outside of your photography business? What were you really going through? Did you kind of connect the dots at all when you were outlining your goals for the year or for last year? Did you notice any like particular things that in your life where you were like, okay, something kind of has to change here?
Yes. So there were a bunch of little red flags that started kind of adding up. So I actually didn't notice them so much. It was my boyfriend and my family members who noticed it more.
Totally.
So there was just a bunch of times where if I ever was, going somewhere, going to my family's house or anywhere, I would always have my laptop with me just in case there was like 15 minutes that I could be doing work. On holidays, I've been on my phone or my laptop just like squeezing in as much work as I could. So basically I was a workaholic and my boyfriend had called me out on it. I remember on New Year's Eve, we were at the super fancy restaurant with our friends and I was like making an Instagram post and like scheduling things. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, there's no need to be like rushing and squeezing everything in. Like, you can take a step back. Like, it's okay to have free time. So yeah, I definitely think that the people in my life from that were able to see things from an outside perspective kind of noticed it quicker than I did. But yeah, so after realizing all those things in January, I was like, okay, I really got to sit down, be more mindful of this, like actually address it and kind of, put more habits into place.
Did you feel that way right away, or did you kind of like bristle a little bit at first? I find myself, like, for instance, my dad has been here for a while. He's retired. So anyway, he's been helping like build stuff at the venue, which has been awesome. But he kind of like made a comment about how much I'm on my phone, and I totally am. But I found myself like bristling a little bit at first. I was like, ugh, like this is how I do my work. But, upon reflection, of course, now I have hindsight. I was like, oh gosh, he's so right. Like, how did you take it at first? Or were you, I'm sure you were like, oh, okay.
No, you're right. I definitely think there's a little bit of like denial.
Yeah.
Because I think, we're kind of like trained to think like this is what an entrepreneur is like. Like, this is just what our lifestyle is like. This is just the way it has to be. This is the way it is. But I mean, I totally understood. And he's always like, my boyfriend is super supportive of my business. So I know he wouldn't just say something to like belittle my business. So I knew that if he was picking up on the fact that I was like really overworking, I knew it was like, okay, this is a big deal now.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely was, it took some time to actually realize like, wow, okay, this is an issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's talk about how you kind of started setting goals for yourself this year that were more about like continuing to scale your business with ease. And then let's get into how other people can do the same if that's where they feel like they are in the stage of their business. So how are you doing that for yourself this year and beyond?
Yes. So there are basically four main things that I kind of broke it down to. So my four main goals were tracking my stats more. So just like knowing my numbers, which I am a numbers person. So that one was actually an exciting goal for me. I know some people aren't, but I love numbers.
Okay. Which stats were you tracking?
Yes. Okay. So I actually have this giant spreadsheet. I actually have a template version of it. So if you want, I can give a link to your listeners and they can download a template, fill in all their own numbers.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll put that up at linpernille.com. So linpernille.com /she creates.
Perfect.
But basically I call it my LTD spreadsheet. So life to date. So basically every single client I have ever worked with is in that spreadsheet. And I have every single statistic you could possibly think of about them. So their wedding date, when they booked, how they heard of me. So like word of mouth or Facebook or ads or whatever. Everything about the package they booked, even down to the number of photos I delivered, my turnaround time. So basically, every single bit of information is in this spreadsheet. So I can look at a glance and get any stat I possibly could need in my business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And And then also when it comes to knowing your numbers, I feel like a lot of times when we're like hustling and worried in our business and like trying to get as many bookings as possible and just do everything we possibly can, it comes from worry of not knowing if we're going to hit our goals or make enough money that year. So I think by knowing your numbers, you can kind of ease that worry. So I know Raina Pomeroy talks about this all the time, about the survive and thrive budget.
Yes.
So basically that's figuring out your all of your fixed and flex expenses. So basically all of your bills, what it costs to live, basically. So I use Mint to do this. So I know Mint is kind of meant as like a budgeting program. So figuring out, for your present and future. But I actually use it kind of backwards. So I just have it running the whole year. I categorize everything. And then I use it to analyze all of my past trends. So where my money went that year. And then I use that to kind of figure out like, okay, this is what my cost of living is. And then by using that LTD spreadsheet, I can figure out my projected earnings for that upcoming year. So based on the bookings I have now, how much I'm going to earn. And then I can look at those two numbers and say, okay, like based on the bookings I have now, I'm going to get by just fine. I can pay all my bills. So you kind of know like, okay, this is your bar. Once you reach it, you can kind of slow down and relax. Or you can choose to keep hustling, but at least there's less pressure because you're reassured that you're going to make it, you're going to be just fine. Yeah, so I think knowing your numbers is a really good way to kind of ease the stress and know when you can kind of rein it in.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Okay, yeah, and I love, so Raina Pomeroy has been on the show. You guys all link to her episode, and it wasn't about like the survive and thrive budget, but I'll link to her episode too because we both love her. I think that's such a good point. I feel like, we've all done it, right? We've all been there where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to keep hustling, but we don't actually know if we have to keep hustling. You know what I mean? We don't actually know what we're bringing in. We don't actually know if we could cover our bills. And, we just feel that way. It's total emotion. It's not based in any kind of fact or any spreadsheet or any numbers. It's just complete emotional, like chaos.
Yeah, it's like phantom pressure. Like you're like, no matter what, like I have to just keep working.
Yes.
So by knowing your numbers, you can figure out like, quote unquote, enough. Like, when is it enough?
Enough.
You can, of course you can keep going, but it's just good to know like, okay, like I've reached this point.
Yes. Okay. So what else did you do? So you tracked your numbers. That's an awesome spreadsheet. We're totally putting that in the show notes, you guys. What else?
Yes. So the second is logging my time. So this is another thing my boyfriend is always on my case about. Every once in a while, if I look like I'm kind of overwhelmed, a little overworked, he'll be like, how many hours did you work today? Because sometimes I work, I don't even know how many hours, like 14 hours a day, crazy numbers. And the difference between when you work for yourself or like when you work at a quote unquote real job, you have set hours at that job. But when you work for yourself, sometimes you just keep working and you have no idea how long you've been working for. So I think it's super important to log your time. So I first started by using Toggle. I had it on my phone. It was like an app. You kind of start and stop a timer and tell it what you were doing throughout those hours. But I actually found a more automated program. It's called Timing 2 for Mac. And it just hooks up with your computer and it logs in every single thing you do on your computer. And even if there's a gap of time where you're not doing anything, it'll give you the option to still label that and categorize it. So I love that. I like it a lot more when it's automated because you can't miss anything. You don't have a choice to forget about anything.
Right.
Which is really awesome. So you can, first of all, figure out how much time you're working each day. But you can also color code, which I love, and categorize everything so you can see how much time you're spending on different tasks. So that's really, really awesome.
How long have you been tracking your time?
So I started a little bit after the new year, so I didn't really dig in immediately, but I'd say at least 2 months or something.
What have you found to be like have you found any big differences between, like in 2017 when you weren't really tracking your time versus these last couple of months where you have been? What have been the biggest shifts that you've noticed?
I feel like I feel better about myself when I know, like, sometimes at the end of the day, especially on like a Monday, I'm like, oh my God, I got nothing done today. But I feel like it's really awesome to be able to look back on your day or look back on your week and see like, wow, like I worked on a lot of things. Like I really got a lot of stuff done. Yeah. And it's just been really enlightening. Like you see how much time you spend on, I don't know, like writing up contracts or invoices or little things that you don't necessarily think add up. Like you see how much time different tasks actually take.
Oh, that's a big one. like how much it actually takes. How long are you actually spending scrolling on Instagram or Facebook?
Right. Yes. All that stuff too. And what's really cool about timing is when you create your different categories, you can give it like a productivity percentage. So like certain things might be like, okay, like it's pretty productive to like, check emails to a certain point. And like editing is like, okay, that's super productive. Like I need to be doing that. So it can give you like an overall percentage for how productive you were that day based on like the percentages that you set. So that's a really cool way to be able to like look at how your day went.
I'm loving this. Okay. I'm just making sure that I get all of these tools.
Yep. I have, it's not an affiliate link, but I have, I think it was like 20% off. I got a special link for it. So I'll also give you that. So if anyone wants to buy it. So yeah, it does cost something. There's like a free trial and I think there might be a free version or like a light version, but it's a one-time fee. So that was totally fine with me.
Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah. That'll be good. So there's Lynn, you've been like a wealth of information already. So I like making sure we get all this here. That's great. I would love that link.
Yeah, sure.
So, I feel like tracking our time, especially if we're seasoned business owners, like we hear it a lot, right? Like track your time, figure out where you're spending your time, et cetera, et cetera. But, it took you you've been in business for a while and it took you even until this year to start tracking your time. So what kind of put you over the edge? Or I guess, how did you decide to start doing it? Was it just like, okay, I am motivated to do this? Or did it kind of take you a while to dig in? Tell me about that kind of evolution.
Yeah, I feel like because, I'm the owner of my own business, I feel like I have to be the CEO of my business. I don't like not knowing things about my business. Like when someone asks me, like, how long do you spend, like, how long does it take you to edit a wedding? How many hours do you spend doing blank? I don't like telling people like, oh, I don't know. Like, I want to know everything I possibly can about my business. So I feel like it's just, I want to be enlightened about what I'm doing. So that was kind of like, okay, you got to be professional. You got to know these things, figure it out.
Right.
That was kind of
Yeah, I really relate to that. We just did our taxes, of course, as we record this. It is tax season, you guys. So if you're listening to this in the future, it might be December or whatever. But as we record it, it's tax season. We just did our taxes this year. And, while it can feel a little bit painful, it's such a great time. It's nice not to be like super surprised by anything, but it's also a great time just to kind of collect yourself within your business again and say, wow, I know all of these numbers. I know where our money went. And you can really, I don't know, it made me feel so great. It wasn't like, whoa, we're millionaires this year, but it felt really good to know those numbers. And it's similar, it's all the same, like know where your money's going and your leads and your time and all of that. But I feel like it's a really empowered feeling when we have these facts about our business, because then we're not in kind of that phantom pressure or that emotional chaos that we talked about earlier.
I was just going to say that word, empowering. Like you feel like you understand your business, like you know how everything is going. Definitely empowering. Yeah.
Agreed. And even for, I wonder if there's other people out here, we talk about ourselves like we're creatives, we're in a creative business. And a lot of what I hear in our industry is that we're like not numbers people, or we don't like math, or I'm certainly one of them, like math and science, stay away from me. But, when I dig into it, I'm like, oh, this is great and it's super fun. And that like the answer is the answer. It's not like creative writing where it could be all kinds of things. Like there's a periphery of things it could be, right? But it's the answer is the answer. Like 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
There's such a sense of peace that comes with that. Okay. What else? What else did you do?
Okay. So number 3 is kind of a little bit more of like a mindset type of thing. So define your own version of success. So you can't really make educated business decisions about the direction you want it to go if you haven't really thought about what your end goal is. So what is success to you? So I feel like a lot of times we're kind of influenced by what, the industry standard for success might be in our industry. So for me, in wedding photography, I feel like the parameter of success that everyone uses is how many weddings you shoot. So a lot of people, like their ultimate goal is just shoot as many weddings as they possibly can, which it's fine. That's definitely one business model of doing it. But for me, that's never been my goal. Like when I visualize, like the end goal of my business, I honestly don't envision myself shooting more than maybe like 20 weddings a year. That's kind of like the sweet spot that I found. Some people like love it. They just want to get as many bookings as they can. Sometimes they like double book on certain days, hire out associate photographers, and, still make more profit that way. But for me, that was just never the kind of business I wanted to run. I always wanted to be the one at the wedding. That's the part I love about my business. So I definitely want to be the one at the wedding. So instead of kind of shifting my business to get as many weddings as I can, so not so much quantity, but I wanted to shift more to quality. So I actually, from the past 2 years, increased my profits 35%, but I only shot 2 extra weddings between those years. So it's not always about the numbers of how many weddings you shoot. For me, it was just gradually raising my prices, shooting more high-end weddings, so kind of honing in on my ideal clients, ideal jobs, and also kind of having bigger packages. I also shoot video in addition to wedding photography, so that was another way I could kind of offer more but not shoot more weddings. Yeah.
Have you been doing video in conjunction with photography the whole time, or did you bring in video later?
No, I actually started with photo and video. So the first wedding I ever shot, I shot it on both photo and video. So yeah.
So are you doing anything else to bring in extra income during these weddings, or is just raising your prices something that helped you increase your revenue by 35%?
Yeah, so honestly, it's just gradually raising my prices, bigger packages, so people choosing like more hours, adding on things like that. And then I also shoot things that aren't weddings, so I shoot like proposals, family photos, maternity photos, things like that. Yeah.
Do you find that, what is your ratio of wedding photography versus other photography right now?
It's funny that you asked that. I literally have like spreadsheets and charts for all of those questions. Let me see. I can actually show you exactly. So this past year, it was really, really large part. It was 84% of my income came from weddings. And then let's see, 11% was from events. So that's like bridal showers, baby showers, bar mitzvahs, all kinds of events. And then 2% was portraits. So not a whole lot of portraits. And then another 2% for engagement photos and things like that.
Oh, okay. So do you feel like you will always, do you want to like switch your pie at all, or do you want to stay like majority wedding photography? Is that where you see your business going in the future?
Yeah, so I definitely think in the beginning, I kind of just tried everything just to see what I liked, and obviously, take whatever jobs I could get. But I definitely love weddings. So I really think I like the ratio it's at right now. So mostly weddings, large part weddings, but then, events here and there, also because it lets me shoot more for that one client. So I've had some clients where I've shot their proposal, and then their engagement photos, and then their bridal shower, and their rehearsal dinner, and their wedding, and then family photos. So it kind of lets me build a deeper connection with like fewer clients.
What do you think so if somebody is wanting to scale their business, well, let's say they're actually like in the midst of scaling right now, do you feel like they need to hire more people in order to scale their business successfully?
I don't think you have to, but I definitely think you kind of reach a point where you can't do everything on your own.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm such a control freak, and like I always try to think of ways I can do everything myself. But yeah, I think everyone reaches a point where you don't have to outsource maybe the entire process to someone else, but you do need help. And I think it's important to kind of recognize when you need help and just hire out as you need it. That's pretty much my fourth tip, is learning how to say no and what to delegate.
Okay. So what are you saying no to right now at this season of your business?
Yeah. So again, with the whole defining your own version of success, when it came to outsourcing, I was so resistant to it for the longest time, because in my industry, the go-to way to outsource is to outsource your editing. So hire someone else to edit your photos for you. But for me, I never wanted to do that because I love the editing part, and I think I'm pretty efficient with it. I'm good at it. So that I was always resistant to it because that's not something I wanted to outsource. But I instead of just outsourcing like an entire process, I've just been trying to like think outside the box and what little pieces of the process can I outsource. So even something as simple as when I have second shooters, most people just take all the photos from that second shooter, do their own culling and editing, and then give the memory cards back. But I actually ask my second shooters to cull their own photos first, so I don't need to be getting all 4,000 photos that they shot at that wedding day. So I asked them to just give me like 700 to 1,000 photos. So just they do the work of culling through the photos and just giving me their best work, because people don't realize it, but culling a wedding can take a whole day. It takes a lot of time just to go through all the photos and really be meticulous and pick out the best photos. So just by outsourcing little things like that, I've been able to save so much more time and just do the editing and the stuff that I really want to do.
Do you think that you could have known what you were willing to outsource and not outsource if you haven't had, all the years of experience that you have now? Do you feel like you had to go through that evolution of being a business owner to understand what was truly important to you to keep and what was important to outsource at this point?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah. I think when it comes to outsourcing, it's figuring out what you don't like to do or what you're kind of slow at doing, or something that would cost you more time or money to do that someone else could do quicker or better or enjoy doing more. So yeah, I think it's kind of like trial and error. Try everything yourself at first, and then just kind of always be self-reflecting and say, okay, is this sucking up too much of my time and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. What's it for me? I feel like there's like a fine line between delegating, like things that you know need to happen in your business and you need to delegate those, but then also just things you should flat out say no to, like things that are time wasters that you don't actually need to delegate. You don't even need to do them, period. Do you agree? Or what would, and if you do, what are some examples like in our industry of things that should be delegated, but then also things that truly sometimes just need a no, period?
I love that you brought that up. So there's actually this thing called the time management matrix. If you Google it, it's just like this 2x2 chart. So on the left, I think it says important or not important, and then the top is urgent or not urgent. So if you just kind of sit down and fill in like the tasks that you do every day into those 4 boxes, you can see if it overlaps not important and not urgent, it doesn't need to happen, like ever. You can just cut it out entirely. So for me, it's kind of like those mindless tasks, like scrolling through Facebook, or just kind of taking a look at like, okay, going through my timing program and saying, okay, what did I use a lot of energy on, but see no return from? So if it's like, I don't know, a certain blog post or certain things that you just realized got no engagement or just didn't really move your business forward, maybe you can cut those out, or, do them when there's free time, but maybe don't make them a priority. Right.
What else? What are we missing?
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. So for outsourcing, it's always been the biggest hurdle for me. It's kind of like two opposites. So it's always the worst feeling in my business when I know I need help with something, but I can't find someone to hire. Yes. But then when I do find that person, it's like the complete opposite. It's like the most rewarding feeling of running a business. So it feels I feel super grateful when I find someone who's a really good worker and does exactly what I need them to do. And it feels really rewarding to be able to use your business to give someone else income.
Yeah. How have you found people to outsource to? That's a good question.
Yeah. So that's the hardest part. But honestly, it's just, for me, I feel like it's being really clear about who you're looking for, like what you need the person to be able to do. So kind of like writing up a job description for what you're looking for. So exactly what programs you need them to be able to use, or what kind of skill set you want them to have, and then putting it out there. So just social media, messaging people who you think might know someone. So the same way that word of mouth is the best way for me to get business, word of mouth is also great for outsourcing and finding people to hire. So honestly, it's just putting it out there. Many times I've been linked up with people who I love working with now, so like assistants and interns and second shooters, from people referring them to me just by those posts that I put out there. So definitely just, it kind of like manifestation, just put it out there. Like people can't answer your needs if you don't put the request out there. So just making it public, exactly what you're looking for.
Oh, yes. Do you find that you're kind of you kind of mentioned this, you find that you're going back to the people that you worked with previously to help you with like future tasks, and you kind of have like a group of people you can rely on when you need to outsource?
Definitely. Yeah. So I have this whole list of all the people I've worked with. And the more you work with them, you kind of realize who's good at like certain types of things, or like, for instance, with second shooters, based on the wedding and like maybe the color scheme, or like the type of, like if it's in a dark venue or a light venue, I kind of know which second shooter would work best for that type of wedding. So definitely the more you work with people, you kind of learn their strengths as well, and you know how to use them, to their fullest ability.
Right. Okay, so as we wrap up here, this has been so much fun. I just love all the resources you provided. I'm such a weirdo about like tools and software.
I love it.
This has been super fun. Tell us like your final, like 1 or 2 tips for people who are scaling their business, who want work-life balance, this work-life integration, balance, whatever you want to call it, you guys, who want that this year and in the future of their business. What's your kind of final biggest tip?
Yeah, so I would say it's all just about self-reflecting and just pretty regularly taking a step back and really thinking about like, okay, how do I feel right now? Am I overwhelmed? What could I be doing differently? Looking at your numbers. It's all just, I think it's just about actually looking at your business and evaluating instead of just kind of going through the day-to-day tasks and just with your blinders on, just working. Just take a step back, actually be more mindful about everything you're doing. And I would also say that if you do find yourself at this stage where your focus is now on like work-life balance and being mindful instead of just growing and building, I know it doesn't seem this way. It seems a little bit stressful. But what's that quote? New level, new devil.
Yeah.
So I feel like at each stage of your business, there's going to be different obstacles. So when you reach this stage of your business, these are just the types of things you need to think about. So if you are at the stage where you do need to worry about how many hours you're working and all that kind of stuff, first, just take a second to give yourself a pat on the back, because it's an awesome achievement to get to this peak in your business where these are the types of things that you're worrying about. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, everyone can start a business. Anyone out there can just, get it started. But right. I think it takes a lot of time and diligence to get to this point in your business. So if you are at this point, definitely give yourself a pat on the back. So not a lot of people make it to this level.
That's exactly right. Longevity and consistency that's like where the rubber meets the road, right? Like even starting this podcast, when I started it almost 2 years ago, there are podcasts that I started with that are no longer even airing new episodes. or even, starting our venue, we're in the second season. There are people who also started in our area who are definitely not taking weddings anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's easy. Right. It's easy to think, oh gosh, I'm not where I should be. But not that we want to say like, oh, I did it better than that person, but at least it's good to say like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still standing, right. And I'm moving on to the next level. And I think it's, we hear all the time I think it's really helpful to hear from people who we even aspire to or admire where they've reached in their business. And they still say like, there's never a place in your business you're going to get to where you're like, oh my gosh, it's like, the Garden of Eden and everything is right. Easy and there's no challenges. Because then honestly, like, why are you in business, Right. You're not growing. And so I love that tip. Like step back and pat yourself on the back because you're doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
Yay, Lynn. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. I have listened to probably every single episode of your podcast, so I'm really excited to be on it.
Me too. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, Lynn, tell everyone where they can find you before we hit the road here.
All right. So on every single social media, I'm Lin Pernille, so LinPernille. And my photography and video website is linpernille.com. And my website for all of my courses and workshops and all kinds of education is linpernilleeducation.com.
Perfect. And I mention this a lot because I know we went over a lot of tools, you guys, but just tap your podcast player and you can get all of the links and tools that Lynn mentioned within the show notes so you know exactly where to go. And then, of course, I will link to all of the sites and social profiles she just mentioned. So, Lynn, thanks again. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.